Last year during a bored weekend, I took a chance on the First Descendant's open beta. Having never heard of it until then, I didn't have any expectations going into it, but honestly, I ended that weekend with a decent bit of interest in its future. Well, nearly a full year later, the First Descendant has finally launched in its full release, and after a full week of playing it, let's talk about this new challenger in the ring of free-to-play looter shooters. Let's get the grime out of the way first. Yes, this game apes a lot from other successful free-to-play shooters. The progression and itemization of Warframe, the mission structure of Destiny. At its core, it takes some of the biggest hitters in the space and smashes them together in a way that's a little blatant. But you know what? It works because of it. That sense of familiarity is strong here if you played any of the other games I mentioned. In my beta impressions, I was taken aback by it, but in the full game I kind of just accept it. It somehow made the game all the more easier to jump into without paying that much attention to the tutorials and so on. But this isn't so much about what the game is inspired by, but what does the game have going for itself? This is a fast-paced PvE third-person looter shooter. You go out on short missions blasting away at a variety of different enemy factions with both conventional weapons and abilities. The mission structure has a loop to it that's well founded at this point. Once you arrive in an area, you flag a variety of small missions and begin one of several different types. Complete these as you go and you unlock the next areas, all while grabbing every new gun and item you come across. For those who are like me, you love the rewarding dopamine hit of getting new drops. The First Descendant has your back in that regard. Completing missions and defeating enemies provides the loot you need to consistently climb the damage ladder. This has a good and bad side in my opinion. If you like a game with more uniqueness per weapon, you might be left a little disappointed. The game does have quite a few weapons though. Like, actually quite a lot for its launch. But you're going to see the same weapon types over and over again in certain areas until you hit the next checkpoint or the next area in the game. All of these have differing stats, but their visuals are the same as to be expected. It may not be the most compelling aspect of the game, but there is a sense of satisfaction whenever you complete a mission and see the numbers going up. Alongside your equipment, every character has 4 different abilities to set them apart from each other. We have our usual tropes here though. We have hard-hitting damage dealers, tanks, and the kind of pseudo-mage types that can constantly set out abilities. Because this depends on the type of character, it's hard to say exactly, but of the 4 or so characters I unlocked so far, they all felt really unique and more significant than in the beta. If you saw my beta impressions videos, one of my big complaints was that the abilities here were not all that significant, and now they definitely are, thankfully. But that's not all. The game also has a grapple. The grapple propels your character forward in an almost Spider-Man-like slingshot. It can help you get around the field in a more interesting way as a universal mechanic. This was really pointless in the beta, but I'm glad they added a lot more reasons to use it and making it more integral to the gameplay with things like platforming and whatnot. So basically the gameplay is solid, but not all that special. It feels good to play, and that's probably the most important point. It's responsive and snappy, maybe too much so if you have the auto aim turned on. Missions are blisteringly quick, and in most situations, the field missions only last about 2 to 5 minutes long, with a few longer types sprinkled in here and there. Each area only has a handful of these before it moves you on with some small story snippet or another reason to move on. They can be repeated anytime for more rewards or just to help others. And these field missions all culminate with at least 2 dungeons or strike type missions that are longer. These are my personal favorites since they have a good mix of gameplay elements all in one. There's a variety of different enemies, mini missions, traversal, and bosses that can be a little tricky as you get deeper into them. The game rounds these off with true boss battles with colossi enemies. They are big, a little frustrating, and eventually need some actual semblance of coordination to defeat. They aren't my favorite parts of the game, but the loot ring that pops out when they're defeated is pretty satisfying. As you can probably tell, I'm kind of into the mission loop here. It's quick and always feels like you're moving forward. There's a lack of loading screens when you're doing field missions, and the quick teleport to players if someone's already doing the challenge nearby keeps the pace up too. Even when I was grinding out items, it was such a fast reset that I never really got annoyed. But speaking of grind, let's jump into the itemization and eventual monetization.
Now what do you want? Go on, I'm waiting.
Just like any other in this genre, you'll be looting lots of enemies not just for equipment, but also resources too. These are used to craft almost every item in the game that isn't attached to some premium purchase. This is great for those of us who want to challenge the grind instead of paying, but this means that certain weapons, upgrades, and characters can all be gotten for free. Personally, I enjoy the ability to actually play the game rather than paying for it, but of course that means contending with drop rates. Similar to Warframe, once resources are gathered, you can craft to obtain new items after the timer completes. So I have no issue with that as a concept, but one gripe is just how bloated the itemization feels here. For example, if I want a new character, I need several things. I need the 3 character parts and a blueprint. Easy enough. But those 3 parts have to be crafted, and the blueprint has to be dropped by a boss. That means I have to grind resources to craft a thing that lets me craft another part to a thing that I ultimately want to make. It's not complicated, just a little overly bloated. But once again, that's the free route, and of course they're not going to make things that easy for us. For those of us who have pockets not lined with Japanese yen, you can actually buy most items in the game, like characters, weapons, and so on. No fuss, no muss. The catch here is that the First Descendant is another one of those games with premium currency rather than a flat rate purchase. It's annoying and honestly fairly exploitative, but it's hardly the first or most egregious offender. This is another case of the game offering, for example, 250 currency, but every item in the game costs more than 300. It's just here to make you want to spend that little bit extra and send you over the FOMO edge that pushes you towards additional purchases. It's scummy, but let's face it, it's really common now. The premium currency gets you a variety of things like unique cosmetics, a battle pass, characters, weapons, or boosters. All of the usual suspects are here. But I will say, look carefully before you're buying anything because the game does indeed indicate if something is available or will be coming up in a story mission, so be sure you want to buy it instead of just being patient. The cosmetics here are pretty unique so far, but personally nothing here is screaming out for me to buy it. The game has a lot of visual customizations for characters, guns, UI, and more for those who are compelled to grab everything possible.
She felt the pulse of an Ironheart in the area, and then simultaneously...
The characters here are definitely the highlight. They're all unique individuals instead of a created hero. The game lets you start with 3 different ones to choose from, and another several are given access to you throughout base story progression and farming. As expected, they all have their own unique quirks. Some are hard up DPS, others are tanks, and some are support. The general archetypes are all here, but I'd be lying if any of them are personally all that compelling. Nothing screams interesting like your next character, Kyle. In all seriousness though, these are some pretty cool characters, but none of them made me say, okay, this is my next character that I definitely have to grind for. And some of them have ultimate variants, meaning they wear gold and white a la Primes like in the Warframe game. Thankfully, gameplay-wise, they're all really unique and interesting, and that might be the real hook. So while shooting and traversal is the same, the abilities and who they're attached to is pretty unique. Also, this game has the usual Korean-style females, so please be aware of that. There's a shocking amount of shiny yoga pants for these soldiers in the future. And granted, I'm not complaining, I get the appeal, and while the default costumes are pretty tame, they go all in on some of the premium ones. The character models and environments are well detailed and realized. The game loves showing off its character models in menus and story moments, and for good reason. Everyone and everything is very detailed, but there's something off here. They have a little bit too much of a doll-like quality to them instead of looking like or feeling like a real person. Everyone is just a bit too perfect. And you're gonna get close-ups of them a lot. The story here is conveyed with some pretty well-made bombastic cutscenes occasionally that really show off when they want to. The rest of it is done through these close shots of the major characters as they stiffly convey lines in a default pose. It just kinda takes the energy out of anything they're saying, just watching the character repeating a default animation for minutes at a time while dialogue is being said. I actually couldn't tell you anything that's going on in this world as a result. Partly because of the immensely uninteresting way the story is conveyed, but also just because the story itself is told in a strange way. Once the game gets started, you're not given much context for the world, characters, factions, situation, nothing. I'm sure it's there somewhere in the game's website or Wikipedia or something, but to not have it in-game makes the first opening hours a little bit rough to latch onto. The situations in-game though are easy enough to understand, but how or why we got there is completely unknown to me. The First Descendant is off to a positive start in my book. It's a familiar experience to be sure. It's taking some of the best parts of its contemporaries and slapping them together to make a satisfying, but maybe not exactly new experience. If you're looking for a game to try in this genre, then dive right in and see if it matches your tastes. It's well made, fast-paced, flow state inducing stuff from moment to moment, but it's not without its flaws. The console experience leaves a little something to be desired with an unstable performance. The marketplace could be a bit more user-friendly, but since when do free-to-play games care about that? And the game's just missing this sense of its own personal uniqueness, and that's a little bit disappointing. Either way, games like this live or die by their future content releases and by how interesting they are. Unlike the folks over at MiHoYo that seem to hook fans by providing info on the next few months of content, there's none of that here. There are some in-game side characters that make you immediately think, well, she's got her booty out, so she's definitely going to be playable in the future. But there's no content table, timeline, or anything like that exists at this point. But I am curious to see where this one goes over the next few months. It's hard to tell how long games like this will survive, but that's also a reason why I don't tend to spend money on them. Either way, that was all for my review of the first week in the world of the First Descendant, and honestly, I'm pretty much enjoying myself overall. We'll have to see how things look in the next few weeks though. If all goes to plan, I hopefully will take another look at this game in the future in the next few weeks to check in on the player count and content situation, if possible. Anyway, thanks for checking out this a little bit more detailed look at the First Descendant and the first week of this game in general. I hope to see you again next time. Please like, sub, hit the bell for notifications, and remember to be nice to each other. It's a good thing. I'm gonna go back to grinding out characters.